Today we can talk about the execute SQL task in SSIS. So what do you mean by the execute SQL task and where we supposed to use that? Okay, execute SQL task can be used to run the SQL queries against to any server. It can support these around 6 types of connections, and it will return these 3 types of results as an output, and it will accept the query mode as a 3 types. Okay, first let's open the SSIS. Okay, this is the 13th bench.
Charger is connected.
Yeah, if you see here, in our previous session, we have discussed about this execute SQL task basic level. So if you take the execute SQL task, here it is, for example. Okay, so if you open this execute SQL task, totally there are 4 tabs: general, parameter mapping, result set, expressions. Under the general, again, we have different types of properties. There are different categories. Like description means you're supposed to give the, what is the use of task. That's general description purpose. And timed out. So this is the default value is 0. For example, you have this query. Okay, you are saying that so this query should be executed in this server. Okay, sometimes server may not respond properly. So by the time the server level, the DBA guys, they will set some property like timed out, 30 seconds, 60 seconds. Okay, it's supposed to try even if that connection was not responded. By the time the task will fail. 0 means default value. For example, I would like to keep the 60 seconds as a timed out. That means this connection will try to interact with the server for 60 seconds while authenticating. Okay, after 60 seconds also the server, if it is not respond, then this task will fail. Like that, this timed out option. So by default 0 only we can keep. Code page means this is the default code page which we supposed to want 1252. Okay, type conversion mode means specify how the task will perform the value to variable type conversions. Okay, for example, from your parent task, you are getting some values to the variables. That variables you are using this stored process, this execute SQL task. By the time, for avoiding the conversions, we can make sure it should be allowed. Other than allowed, there is a none operation. Okay, when it comes to the result set, it will support 3 types of result set. One is single row, full result set, XML. Single row means your query will return single value. It's a kind of single row. Okay, when it comes to the full result set, that means your query is executing and it was returning the table of results. That is called full result set. When it comes to the XML, your query is executing and getting the results in the format of XML. Okay, so based on that, you're supposed to select the respective result set type. For example, here my query was returning table of results. So that's what I have kept the full result set. Here you are saying this is the full result set. That means table of results. When you go to the result set, there you're supposed to define the object variable. Okay, so this is the variable. I have a flexibility to create the even here. Okay, that variable you're supposed to assign it here. And if you check that variable type is object. Object means table of values it should store. For example, I'm getting the single value. So by the time I could keep them it respective to the data type. Okay. In such a way, the result set it will perform. And when it comes to the connection type, I told you, right? Totally it will support 6 types of connections: Excel, OLEDB, ODBC, EDO, EDO.NET, SQL Mobile. Okay, in the real time, mostly, you can use OLEDB, ADO.NET, and Excel. These three, I think, ADO as well, sometimes. Okay, so this SQL mobile, okay, ODBC, not sure. The real time you could not see SQL mobile. Might be ODBC in some of the projects where they are using the ODBC providers. There might be a possibility to use this ODBC. Okay. So as of now, I'm using OLEDB, which is connecting to my SQL server. So here, SQL source type, that means how you are going to give the query here. Direct input means directly we can copy paste the query here, or else file connection. For example, your query was there in the file, .SQL file or text file. Okay. By the time you're supposed to select the file connection and you're supposed to create the file connection here. Okay. For example, your query which is coming from the variable. By the time you're supposed to select the variable, and here you're supposed to select the respective variable from which variable you are getting the SQL query. Okay. So as of now, I am going with the direct input. Okay. So when you call the stored procedures, by the time this option it will be enable. Okay, is for a stored procedure. Okay. So here bypass prepare means indicates whether the task should prepare the query before execute it or not. We're supposed to make it as a true. Okay. So here if you see the options, browse. So here if you want to import any SQL queries or such kind of things, we can use this browse option. Build query means, okay, instead of writing the SQL queries in SSMS and copying them and pasting here, you can directly, okay, build the query here. Like that pass query, whether this whichever the query you have written, that query is the valid one or not, without having any syntax errors. Okay. When it comes to the parameter mapping, for example, if your query it is accepting the input parameters, by the time here in the direction tab, here you're supposed to give the either input or output or return value. Okay, that respective data type, and this is the parameter name. So parameter name, it is always indication of the index position. So always don't forget. So the index position should be start from the 0. Okay. So here this is parameter size tab. What do you mean by the parameter size means? For example, this is the long data type. For example, it is in SQL Server, the long data type, it is similar to the integer data type. Just consider, okay? For example, when the value, it comes beyond the integer data type, that means big int value. So by the time, here also we have a long data type only. In SSIS, we have only one data type to handle the integers, long data type. Okay, in execute SQL task. So -1 means it will automatically, based on the, for example, this is the default size we are saying to the execute SQL task. Just consider the default size, the parameter size -1 means. Okay, for example, from your SQL Server, text data type is coming. Okay, for example, when it comes to the SSIS, by the time you have used the varchar. Okay, we are simply saying that, okay, -1 means just consider how much amount of, bytes of data is there. Just allocate that much of data. That is the meaning of parameter size -1. Allocate the proper size to the respective variable. That is the meaning. Okay, this result set, for example, in the result set, in the general tab, there is a result set, right? So if you select as a none, that means your query is executing, but it was not returning any results. So by the time we can keep the none, by the time this result set tab, it will be disabled. Only when it will be enabled, when this particular result set property, if it is having these 3 values out of anyone except the non. for example, single row. By the time this result set will be enabled. Why? Because here only we supposed to define the variables. Okay, here only we supposed to define the variables to store the values which are returning by our SQL query. Okay, so when it comes to the expression, if you want to make it as everything as dynamic, by the time we can use the expressions. Okay, in the at the end of the course, I can show you how to do everything parameterized or expressionized. I will show you. Okay, so if you observe here, the first task here, we are calling simply one stored procedure which is doesn't have any input parameter or any output parameter. So that's what even this stored procedure will not return any results. That's what I have kept in none. Okay, and this is the connection. This is the OLEDB provider. Okay, so here if you go to the parameter mapping, there is nothing. Why? Because my stored procedure, it should not doesn't have any input or output parameters. Even though result set also disabled because the result set is none. So this is simple execute SQL task which is calling the one stored procedure. Okay, for example, I would like to enable it. Okay, so I would like to call this execute SQL task means simply right click and execute. That stored procedure, it will execute in that respective connection. Okay, this is it is executing. If you go to the progress, then it will show you the status when it is got started and when the validation is happened, when the validation is completed. So such kind of details it will show you. Let me connect to the server. See, the execution is completed. So this is the stored procedure which is executed 100% is complete. Okay, for example, you have written one select query which is returning this single value. That means from this table, I would like to read, the database which is pointed to AdventureWorks 2019. Okay. So that exercise package will try to get the value from this particular database. Let me show you. This is the query which we have written, right? So what we are doing, we are trying to take maximum total due amount, which is converting into as an int. Okay. This single value, we should get it into. Why? Because this query was returning the value that is single row. That's what I have said. So when you come to the result set, so the result set name is max cell, which is the alias name. Okay. That value we are storing into this particular variable. Okay. Into that particular variable. So for example, here, if you come to here, this is my query, SQL query. Okay. I will show you here. So here it is returning table of results with multiple columns, 1, 2, 3, 4 columns. And it was returning number of records as a table. So that's what I use here, the result set as full result set. And that results, I would like to store it in this variable. That variable type is object variable. Okay, if it is full result set, then you're supposed to store it in only object variable. Okay, when it comes to the execute SQL, this execute SQL task, for example, I have a one select query which is accepting the parameter in the where condition, where product ID equal to, for example, let me copy into SSMS. Okay, so this is the table. Okay, so I would like to filter the data based on the product ID. Okay, so that product ID, I would like to make it as a parameterized. Okay, that's what I have given the question mark. In SSIS point of view, whenever you are using the OLEDB provider, if parameter means SSIS will allow only question mark. Okay, So here question mark I have given. That means at the runtime, we will get the value to this parameter position. Okay. So here I have given the equal to question mark. So if you go to the parameter mapping, so I have a one variable that is use prod ID. The data type is length. Okay, here it is. If you go to the variables, here it is. I have given as of now 711 as a default value. Okay. So when you pass the parameter, it will try to execute and it will get the results. For example, 711 we have given right in SIS. So if you see here, table of results we will get. So that means those all results I would like to store it in a full result set, right? In the result set property, so I would like to store all the table of results in sales order details object variable. Okay, so that object variable I can use it in my further executions in my SQL in this SIS package. In such a way, even we have flexibility to call the stored procedure with the input and output parameters. Okay, either input or output or return values also it should be fine. For example, so I would like to create one stored procedure. Create proc. Okay, get sales data, sales order, sales orders data. Okay, so it is accepting one parameter that is product ID. I would like to give prod ID. Okay, the data type it is integer. Okay, as begin here I would like to use that variable and for example this is my stored procedure. It is accepting one input parameter. I want to call the stored procedure in my SSIS package. How to call? So simply write the statement first exec stored procedure. Here prod ID integer it is accepting as the input parameter. Simply you supposed to give the question mark. Okay. So for example, here I have taken the execute SQL task. So I would like to connect to my server, that is this one. Okay, here the SQL statement I would like to give. So here this is question mark. Okay, so when you go to the parameter mapping, so here you supposed to define the parameters to that particular question mark. That means parameter position. So that is, I have already one variable that is called prod ID. I would like to give the direction as the input and the data type as a long and the parameter name as 0 and the parameter size is default -1. I would like to keep it. And at the same time, once this stored procedure is executed, okay, based on input parameter, I will get the results actually. So I will get the table of results. So I would like to store them in one object variable, then go to the result set, click on add. So here you're supposed to give the index position as 0 and the variable name, that object results I would like to store in one of the variable. For example, ASP results. Okay, the variable name I would like to give. The type is object. Why? Because it was written in table of results. Okay, so I would like to execute this execute SQL task. You see, the SP got executed. Okay, this is the time it was taken. The starting time 8:19:43. It was completed in 8:19:51. That means within 2 minutes. Okay, not more than 2 minutes. Like that, we can pass the input parameters. For example, Your stored procedure is having the output parameter as well. Okay. How to handle the output parameters in SIS? Okay. For example, ఈ stored procedure ని modify చేస్తున్నా handle the output parameters కి. Okay. For example, number of records a parameter pass చేయంగా ఎన్ని వచ్చినాయి అనేది నేను అవుట్పుట్ గా చూపిద్దాం అనుకుంటున్నా. Or else let me take another example. Here we are calling one stored procedure, right? So దీనికి output parameters apply చేసి చూద్దాం. Okay, stored procedures. USB data populate employee main. So it is expanding. Yeah, this is the one. I would like to modify this aspect, which allows us to keep the output parameter. Okay. What happened? Well, let's wait for until it was open. My God, ఎందుకు ఇంత టైం తీసుకుంటుంది? Yeah, so it is produced with the script. Okay, so here I would like to declare one variable, number of inserts, integer. So here I would like to make it as a out. That means how many records got inserted, I would like to use as a out parameter. Okay, so now okay, so this is simply I have modified. Okay, so this stored procedure I would like to execute in SSIS package, which is having the output parameters. Okay, so simply exec. Okay, if you see here the number of inserts in output. Okay, so you're supposed to first declare the variable. How we are calling in SQL Server, the same way we're supposed to call, but instead of this parameter name, we can pass the quotient, right? Records, record count. Okay. As the record count, for example. So here Okay, this is the one. So I would like to take one execute SQL task. Okay, so create the connection first, that is B12 batch 12. Here I would like to give, here I have given the question mark since. So what I supposed to do, I would like to go to the parameter mapping. Okay, go here. So that particular record count, I would like to store them in one of the variable, that is, for example, number of records. Okay, the value type it is, for example, even if you kept in 62 or in 32, in 16. Okay, so the direction you supposed to change as output. Okay, the parameter name I would like to give 0 and size is -1. That's it. So once this execute SQL task is executed, it will return the result, and the output parameter value should be stored in this particular variable. Okay, execute it if you have it out. Yeah, if you see here. Okay, it is executed. If you go to the progress, then you can see. Okay, in such a way, we can pass the output parameters as well to your execute SQL task. Okay, for example, where you have a situation, so you have used the ADO.NET connection instead of OLEDB in your project. Okay, so here I would like to take another execute SQL task. So here I would like to take ADO.NET, create the connection. For example, I have used ADO.NET connection instead of this. Okay, yeah. Okay, so by the time the remaining all are same, but parameters only the different. For example, you have a this query, you have a this query which is accepting the parameters. For example, which is accepting the parameters. By the time question marks will not work. Question marks will work only for the OLEDB. Okay. Then when you use the ADO.NET, by the time how we supposed to pass the parameters means, I will show you. Simply you're supposed to give, okay, at the rate parameter name. Okay. So ADO.NET. So where is the parameters? Where is the parameters? 1 second. It will show you here. Yeah, here if you see, for Excel, OLEDB, ODBC, ADO, for these all will allow the parameters. If it is ADO.NET connection, by that time you supposed to give the parameter like this. Okay, parameter like this. Simply you supposed to give the parameter name. That's it. But remaining all are, you have flexibility to give the question mark. Okay, don't confuse. Only this is only for the ADO.NET. Okay, for example, which query I would like to call this query. Okay, this prod ID as a parameter I would like to pass. Okay, here it is. Okay, question mark నేను యూజ్ చేయలేదు. At the rate parameter name ఇచ్చాను. ఇప్పుడు go to the parameter name. add it. So product ID అనేది parameter name గానే pass చేయాలి. So here it is. So this is 0. That's it. Execute. Something there is a failed with the following. Must declare the scalar variable product ID possible failure. So by that time, this parameter name, 1 minute. Okay, while using the ADO.NET connection, by the time, whichever the parameter name you have given, this parameter, you're supposed to give it in parameter name as well. Okay, then only it should work. If you give the 0, it should not work out. So if you see, execute the task. Yeah, you see, it went success. So if you go to the progress, here the results it should come. Okay, so this is all about the execute SQL task. Okay, this is the one which we can use mostly in every SSIS package. Okay, every scenario lo మనం దీన్ని యూజ్ చేస్తాం. మీరు రియల్ టైమ్ లో మోస్ట్లీ యూజ్ చేసే టాస్క్ లో ఇది ఒకటి. This is only one task. Okay, so this is all about the execute SQL task. Even you have a flexibility to create Excel connection as well. Okay, in the further you will get one requirement, real-time requirement in the further continued sessions. By the time I will show you how to use the Excel connection. Okay, so this is all about the execute SQL task. Any doubts?